this fella in the lobby that seems to know a little about fighting.
A little bit, yeah. Drug me up here, huh?
This is Cody Garbrandt. Cody is UFC champion. 135, yeah?
35.
135. And you had a hell of a run. You went as a 11-0 when you got your belt.
Correct, yes.
So 111 fights in a row is pretty tough to do with those guys, I understand.
Yeah, it's tough, yeah. Stay busy and enjoyed it.
How do you get started in that gets you into, what was your first sport or MMA related thing that led to that journey?
My mother put us, I have a brother that's 10 months older than me. So my mom raised us. My father's been in and out of prison my whole life. And
mine was too.
Here we are, right? So she put us in wrestling. She was a single mother, so probably for our energy, the craziest thing to do is put us in wrestling. So we did wrestling and we excelled at it. Our uncle wrestled, so we was always going to his wrestling matches in high school when she would take us to the gym, and we always looked up to him. He played sports a lot, so we did wrestling. I started out wrestling, loved that, and found like a huge world, of wrestling, amateur wrestling. Growing up, folk style in America, we do folk style. So learning camps and open tournaments and national tournaments, figuring out there's a huge, wrestling world. So that was our first love, was wrestling. Then my uncle was a boxer. He boxed, did a lot of boxing training. He actually had a life sentence at 15 years old. Got acquitted 23 months later, gave himself, to the Lord, had epiphany in prison, was down the wrong path, and he was boxing. Did a lot of that, but my mom didn't want us to box. She was afraid of us to be punch drunk. So, but wrestling, she was like, "Oh, I would love for you to wrestle." So she stayed away from boxing for a while, but there was a gym across the street from my grandma's house. So when I was younger, I'd always run. So I was saying, I'm gonna go run. It was about 3-mile distance to my grandma's and back, so I'd run to my grandma's in time for boxing sparring and go over and spar Roy and his, fighters in the garage. And then I would shower at my grandma's, get something to eat, run back to my mom's house. So I did that for a while, and I was sparring with Roy, and he's, very talented boxer himself, and we were teenagers, and he ended up breaking his rib during sparring. And he was like, finally told my mom and grandma, he's like, "You gotta let this kid fight. He's got the abilities, he's very skilled." Finally, after some brush-ins with some fights, growing up, my mom finally let me fight, and she's never missed a fight since then. It was, always sometimes watches through her hands, but she was my biggest supporter. And then once MMA became popular in the early 2000s, 2005, 2006, I was in grade school, junior high. That's what I wanted to be. When I first saw UFC, I was like, I'm going to be a UFC champion. I just want to be a UFC fighter. I was like, I'm going to be a champion. Like, how far-fetched was that, to think? But something I always believed and something that I always looked forward to. And when I became 18, in Ohio, you had to be 18 to cage fight. So I talked to this promoter that had a nice promotion in Ohio. Actually, Stipe Miocic fought for the company. A lot of actually UFC fighters, 3 or 4 different UFC champions from Ohio fought in that same organization. So my uncle was always dragging me there to the fights because he had trained a lot of the local fighters in Ohio. So I just was like in love with it, something I wanted to do. And I think I turned 18, and then the next week I had my first cage fight, and just fell in love with everything about, call it a sport, but I felt everything I love about being a martial artist. Even though I knew nothing about martial arts, I wrestled and boxed and street fought. I didn't have a dojo, I didn't have a sensei, I didn't have a belt rank system. I didn't have any of that. So I didn't really know martial arts. I just enjoyed what it was, in my mind, to be a martial artist. For me, it was like creativity, setting goals, obtaining them. You have a fight camp, you have 6 weeks, 8 weeks, you have to, can't go to the parties, I can't go, do all this stuff that 17, 18, teenagers were doing. I was in the gym constantly training, trying to find ends meet to pay the gym fees, to pay the gas, to get to the, I was driving almost 3 hours round trip to go to the local gym. Each gym that I was going to, you had to go and, get more and more diverse with coaches and the martial arts. There's so many different skills you have to have as a martial artist. It's not just boxing. You have to have kickboxing, Muay Thai, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, conditioning, game plan. You know, it's just not, you got another guy that you're fighting that believes that he's the best and is willing to do whatever he's able to do to get to that point. So you have to really become a martial artist. And for me, I really didn't know what that was until I got out to Alpha Male, Team Alpha Male. I went out there in 2013 at 22 years old, and it was the first major gym that I went to with a bunch of UFC fighters at the top of their division. And I was there for a week, and I was just blown away by how in-depth they were in with it all. They're true martial artists. And having a good mentor like Uriah Faber would always say, you got so many hours in a day. We all get the same hours in a day. It's what you do with that. Like, why are you skipping practice because you want to go do something else? Like, make practice priority, and you have the rest of the time to go and do whatever you want to do outside of that. So, we don't get paid 9 to 5. We don't have regular jobs like that, but we clock in, we clock out. We have the day-to-day freedom where we train 9 to 11. We go to lunch. We go, do what we need to do, and we come back at 2 to 4. Then we go eat dinner and come back at 8 to 9. So we have the day-to-day freedom to do that. So he's always preaching of become a martial artist, give up the things that you need to give up in order to reach the goals that you wanted to do.
I think a lot of people don't understand the part that you just explained, and I didn't really understand that. Tito Ortiz is the first person that really put that in my head. Like, he was world champion. He would tell stories like that. He's like, well, I got to drive 2.5 hours round trip, or 4 hours if there's bad traffic in California to go. I got to go to the kickboxing gym here and the jiu-jitsu thing there, and the back to wrestling. I like that wrestling gym. And, so the guy was already world champion, defended his belt a couple times, but he still spent a hell of a lot of time on the road, going from boom, 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 boom.
Have to, I feel like this sport always is evolving. You have to evolve constantly with it. You see, if you are a fan of the sport and you watch it in depth, you see new styles, new fighters coming out, younger fighters, disciplinaries, wherever region they're at in the world. The Dagestanians got the wrestling, that kind of style, the lockdown, the sambo, things like that. And, have a lot of the guys, the Brazilians having the spinning, flying knees and kicks. And, so it's always just getting reintroduced new styles and techniques. So I feel like you always have to be in the gym training. I'm not saying you have to be in fight camp. There's a difference between fight camp and then day-to-day training. Like, for me, I'm always training. I always stay ready, because you never know when Dana's going to call you and say, hey, there's a fight 4 days out. Look at my buddy Dan Ige. Dan Ige, he fought the Brazilian kid.
3 hours notice,
3 hours.
4 hours
He was
notice.
at the spa getting a massage body work he gets on Saturdays. And I just was training with him the day before, and we had a killer workout. I mean, my legs were fried. So I'm in my mind thinking, like, this dude just went through the same workout and he's about to fight. But not even that, like the soreness, but like thinking about the thoughts that you have. If you say yeah, you say no, or the intrusive thoughts, am I ready for this? But, he just suited up, left, went straight to the arena and fought in 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever it was. A top, guy that's a kid that's probably, on his way to be a world champion himself, and had a great fight, a really good fight with him. So, it's that constant being ready, staying ready,
I'm curious. This was a topic that came up yesterday. I had Paulie Malignaggi was sitting there last night, and he told really, I think it's a wonderful story. He started boxing at 16. 6 months later, he went to his first professional fight to watch at Madison Square Garden. He's from Brooklyn, and he talks about the emotion of that. He's like, I got to do that. I got to be that guy. I want to be the guy on the. And 9 years later, he is the guy at Madison Square Garden, the headliner, and won his title, defended his title, won a different title, defended it a couple times. Oh, yeah. But I thought that was a hell of a story that we were as a teenage boy, and I had my versions of that in different business areas where I'm like, fuck this, whatever it takes to go. I got to go do that.
All cost, yeah.
But what is your version of that story where you have a sincere thought, or even a far-fetched but sincere thought of like, I want to be a world champion at that, and then you became the world champion.
Yeah,
at that.
I think throughout my teenage years, that's what I wanted to do. I didn't have any other dreams of being anything else but a UFC world champion. It wasn't, There's WC, there was Strikeforce. I knew I wasn't gonna probably be, you guys gotta think too, the UFC only had lightweight all the way up to heavyweight. So they didn't even have my weight class when I was in it. So I gravitated to the WC. Uriah Faber was the pioneer of the lighter weight fighters getting attention because he was flashy. He was this California kid with long hair, looked like a surfer. He went out there and fought really well. He was like a good-looking, sharp guy, and he would go out there and fight. He'd be like, wow, this guy, he goes out there and throws spinning back elbows, all kinds of crazy stuff that he was willing to do. I remember one of his fights, he broke both of his hands and he was just throwing elbows. Like, he's one of those guys, and after getting to know him and being on his team for the last decade, his will of just doing whatever it takes that we talked about, like to get to that point. So for me, that was the same thing. I was in a small town. A lot of my friends were, getting hooked on drugs, ODing. I come from that, my family. A lot of my families are, fathers. Both my uncles, spent majority of life in prison. My uncle has been sober for 5 years out of prison. I have a good relationship with him now. But I didn't want that. And I know my mom worked so hard to give us our best start with what she had. She had me and my brother on her own. We were 10 and a half months apart, and she did absolutely everything in her power to be the mother and the father, be the disciplinary, but also show us kind of like what tough love was. That's what we call it, tough love. And she had to be like that. And I'm very thankful for the way that we grew up, and thankful for gratitude that I get to do these kind of things, speak to you guys, becoming friends with Derek, little things in life that I want to think about just from me as a child, thinking I want to be a UFC champion, not thinking anything else was outside besides being a world champion. I remember when I was fighting and I got my first 50K bonus. Oh my gosh, that fight with Ahmed, I remember going into that fight. It was my first main event fight. I had like $52 or $56 in my bank account. I remember my adopted father came, and my ex at the time took us to this nice restaurant up to go take us on. I had like 12 of my teammates. I'm like, oh, I got it. Like, not thinking, I'm not even worried about it. I'm like thinking of the fight, got the bill. It was like, almost $3,000. And I was like texting them on the side. They were like, hey, like, take care of this tab. Promise tomorrow after the fight, I got you. I got it back. Like in my mind, I'm like, man, I'm in the hole. I'm in the hole, and I gotta hem this back, And then, that was like my big fight. The first main event, I'm knocking him out, get my first 50K bonus. I mean, just, I never pictured that kind of stuff. I just pictured being a world champion. Money was never a motivator to me. It was just being the best at something. Then everything else came with it. The fame and stuff is not what it's cracked up to be. Like, I enjoy fans and meeting them, but I just truly wanted to be the best. I think I just enjoyed what that was, And sometimes, like, in my life, the light at the end of the tunnel was keeping me alive and keeping me driven was, ironically as it sounds, hearing Bruce Buffer say my name as a world champion, Dan White strapping the title on me. I had that vision replay in my head so many times as a child. I'm like, man, I started to believe, like, man, I'm pretty crazy to believe this, and then my teachers and peers would say, like, hey, can you make money in fighting? I was like, that's not my goal to make money. I just wanted to be the best. It's something I enjoy, and then to see the UFC where it's at now and globally growing, fastest growing sport in the world, the opportunities it presents, and that's what I think it's exciting, especially at this stage in my career. Every fight's a opportunity. That's how I look at it. It's an opportunity. Like, what comes with the win and what comes with a loss. And for me, it's like trying to keep that balance. Never too high off a win and never too low off a loss. Just trying to keep that balance, because you guys know, like, always the good times aren't going to be here and all the bad times are not going to stay. So it's like being balanced with the highs and the lows is really what helps me, like, stay motivated, stay engaged. I used to go to some of the fights like, just get done with this fight and then we'll go, figure out what after, instead of focus on the engagement, because this window closes. You can't fight forever, unfortunately. I wish we could, but Father Time is a bastard, but he comes to us all. So for me, just knowing that time is limited, especially in my career, and just going out there and give it my all, for me, that's at the end of the day, just showing up every day. Some days I don't feel like training. Some days I don't feel like fighting, but you know what? I have to. It's something that we have to do. On those days that you don't go there and you push yourself, and those are the better days. You make more progress on the days you're feeling good. And I have a great coach, Chase Pammy, at the Cal Poly. Amazing coach, runs a program here at Gold Rush Academy. He always says the 1/3 method. He's going to have 1/3 that you're going to feel really good, real good training. You're going to 1/3 of practice you're not going to feel the best, and then 1/3 you're just going to get your ass beat. You're getting beat up. Like, it's going to be the worst of the worst. So you break it down in 1/3. There's going to be 1/3 that you feel good, 1/3 is not okay, 1/3 is going to be really bad. So just take it as that. There's always going to be those days, and you just keep the balance of that and keep chugging forward and staying motivated. I'm not even saying motivated. I think, motivation comes and goes. I think, everyone's motivated at the beginning of the year, get in the gym, lose the weight, New Year's resolution. It's motivation. Being a driven person is what I like to call it. Like, I have a drive in me because I'm fueled with drive to obtain this next win. And I have a fight in 6 weeks that I'm excited for. It's a tough kid. Kid's got a 5-fight win streak. I'm excited to take that from him. I'm like, hey, he's on a roll. I lost my last fight. It's a good fight for me. So the opportunity is what I keep talking about. Opportunity to win. There we go. We renegotiate contracts and we go from there. So just being driven towards that.
I love what you just said about motivation. People ask me questions about that. As how do you stay motivated? I said, I'm not fucking motivated a lot of times,
No.
but I'm also not a bitch. So
Yeah.
I remember to be disciplined to you use your discipline to build habits, and then after you have the momentum of a habit, then we just have to maintain that habit.
Consistency.
But, these are the things that I'm supposed to do on this day, and this day, and this day, and that day. And then I don't renegotiate that with myself. Maybe I'm just going to be half a bitch today. Like,
Yep.
I don't renegotiate those things. It's like, that's what we're doing today. It's on the schedule. That's what we're doing. And I think motivation is highly overrated. Like, you don't need a lot of motivation. You got to have a goal. You have to have some seriousness or some level of drive about obtaining that goal. And you got to be disciplined. It's like, well, what's the shit I got to do to get from here to there? Let's make sure we do that consistently. So, I don't hear a lot of world champions or other highly successful people talk about their motivation level on a given day. They're just like, well, I got shit to do whether I feel like it or not.
Yeah, it's like a lot of people drive to work and they don't have to, they don't have to worry about, I hope I don't break something, hope I don't, get knocked out today, hope I don't tear my, that's the things that I drive. I'm like, man, I hope I get through this day and I'll be able to train the next day. And then the next day, hey, I have 8-week camp, I'm making it to the fight, feeling pretty good, had a great camp. Then you go up there and it's a fight at the end of the day, something happens, you lose the fight, okay? Then it's like back down, you see those people, they go off and they party and they, take that loss really hard, instead, and then there's other people that, losing motivates them. For me, I lost my first cage fight, amateur ever. I was so stoked to get in there and fight. It was waited years to do it, 18, first birthday, a week after my 18th birthday. I remember going to this venue, and it was called War on the Shore, Geneva, War on the Shore. And it was raining out, and they had the outside cage. So they had like a tarp, basically a tarp on top of it. And I wasn't even old enough to go into the bar. That's where the warm-up room was at. So I'm warming up in the rain. I'm warming up in the rain. I'm like, this is, I had a friend of mine that owned the gym. He helped out a lot with everything. And he was like, this is it's going to be funny when you're looking back and you're a world champion, you're gonna, at these times, you're gonna look back and laugh at these fights that you did. I'm like, here I am, like, warming up in the rain because I'm not even old enough to go into the bar to warm up, walk into the cage, raining, and it was like sideways, like in Forrest Gump, where it's just like coming down, so it's coming down in the cage. My guy never showed up for weigh-ins. They're like, oh, he's gonna come. So I'm like thinking the whole time, like, dude, like, my mom's there, all my family friends are there. And I go on there and get into the fight. And it was a good fight. Kid was tough. He was a D1 wrestler. And yeah, got in there and got choked out. I'm like, damn, dude, like, what now? And then my buddy was like, dude, you're gonna laugh about this fight when you're older, and this is the beginning, And at times and moments in my life that I'll, even not self-doubted myself, but like, man, just came to the conclusion like, dang, like, how bad do you want it? You're gonna go back to the gym where, hey, you're supposed to beat this kid or win this fight. And it's embarrassing to lose, it's embarrassing to have that happen. But, for me, I was driven and focused on that goal, and I was, no matter how I had to get there, I was doing it.
I think that no matter what is an important thing. That a lot of people miss that. There's I have this goal that I'm thinking about. Kind of, it's convenient. I might like to accomplish maybe. And that's a very different thought than like no, I'm going to go do that shit no matter what. It's a very different thought.
Oh yeah.
You watch this video all the way through, and that tells me you're dedicated to learning more and earning far above average outcomes in your life. Congratulations for that. But now it's time to take action. If you could have earned those results by yourself, you would have done it already. My head coach has opened up a few spots on his high-demand calendar for an in-person, one-on-one strategy session to help you. On this call, we'll give you the pragmatic advice that you can implement tonight to get laser-focused on the right metrics and leave mediocrity far behind in your past. Click that link right now in the description below and apply for your call immediately. Do it now.